and it's like, oh wow, my day has changed, my week has changed.
Yes. And like for that reason too, I think people think because I am like this exercise junkie and I run marathons and yada yada that like every workout I do is some hardcore, crazy, gnarly workout. And like that's so not the case. I take gentle yoga classes regularly.
Hmm.
I consider stretching a workout because it's
Hmm.
that kind of stuff is just as important as gaining strength or burning
Yep,
calories or anything like that.
totally. For freaking sure.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tibersi.
Hello, everyone. What is up? Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode of Jokes and the Gym with Rudy Tibersi. I'm super stoked about the episode this week, and listening back to it, I was like, oh wow, this is a dream freaking guest. Tess Barker is the kind of guest that makes you feel like you're a good podcast host. You'd listen to the episode and be like, oh, this is a good podcast. But in actuality, it's probably like, oh, this is a good podcast guest. And the host is trying. Because I am. I'm trying. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to improve at this thing. There were some technical difficulties. There was some buzzing and feedback, and I'm trying to work to get better at fixing that stuff in post. So, working with Riverside and Final Cut and the software that I'm using to produce these things on my own, which is fun and it's a new task, and I'm enjoying trying to do that as well. And she just made this podcast flow so well. I jump all over the place in my questions and I go all over it because I like talking about a lot of stuff, and she was just able to include so much good information, so many valuable, actionable tips that you could use as a comedian, as a person trying to get in better physical health, as a person who just loves comedy and loves podcasts. So yeah, it was just a really great conversation. We barely knew each other, and so I'm so thankful that she was gracious enough to be on my podcast. And so I'm excited for you to get to listen to our conversation. And if you are in Reno, Nevada on March 22nd, she will be recording a special there, which we get into a bit on the pod as well. So if you are in the biggest little city in the world, then check it out because it's going to be hilarious. She's hilarious. And if you are my podcast sponsor, you don't exist. So I want to take a second to thank you. You are nothing. You don't do anything for anyone, but you are not real. So give it up for Beluga Graphics, who hasn't done anything ever and is not a real thing. You, though, are a very real thing, and you're about to listen to a real podcast with some real freaking people. Again, enjoy my conversation with the hilarious, the dedicated, the talented Tess Barker. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm super stoked to have my guest today. I was lucky enough to feature for her a couple weeks ago in Springfield, Oregon. Thriving, bustling, beautiful Springfield, Oregon. And I had such a great conversation with her after the show and her friend that I was super stoked when she said she'd be delighted to be on the podcast. She is a podcaster herself. She's a comedian. She has multiple podcasts, one of which is called Lady to Lady, and the other is called Toxic. And it's about Britney Spears. I'm super excited. Please welcome everyone, Tess Barker. Yay! Woohoo! Yeah, Tess is in
Hi,
the house.
Rudy. Yeah, I just entered the room.
Yeah, Tess is here. Nice. How you doing today? How's what's today? Is today a Wednesday? Hump day? How you
It's
feeling?
Wednesday. I love a Wednesday. I'm good. It was raining really hard the last couple days in LA, so it's sunny today. The air is actually clear, which is a kind of a rarity here.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
That sounds so nice. LA, it's one of those places that just has a temperature. How
Mhm.
does that work for you?
Oh, I love it. I'm from California. I think it's ideal. I don't. It's hard for me to imagine living anywhere else. I don't enjoy severe weather. I don't drive in it. I
Yeah.
don't thrive in it. It's just a no for me.
No, I hear you. Right on. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about your podcasting experience. Can you tell me about Toxic a little and your role in the whole Free Britney thing? Because I wasn't even that aware of that. until I was on the show with you. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so Toxic, the Britney Spears Story, is a show that I made. It's a limited run 10-episode show that's sort of like, I describe it as like, it's like in the style of Serial. It's like a serious documentary podcast where we spent years sort of talking to people who were close to the Britney story, talking about the issue there. And how we arrived at making that show is my Lady to Lady co-host, Babs, and I, in 2017, we started what we thought was a comedy podcast that we were always like texting each other, and we had this group of friends that was always texting each other about what was going on Britney's Instagram. And Babs had the idea that like, let's do a show where like all we do is just over dissect Britney's Instagram. So like that was supposed to be the comedy, is that we were taking something that we thought was very frivolous, like very seriously.
Right. But
basically what happened, and so that sort of was what the show was for like a year, a little bit over a year. But sort of by nature of the fact that like every week we were paying really close attention to her Instagram, and every week we were really talking in depth about what was going on in her life, just by giving her and her life like that serious of consideration, like we started to realize that something really alarming might actually be going on with her. She was always alone, and these things that seemed kind of funny at first were really unsettling. It was like, why isn't anyone ever with her? Why is she always in her house? Like, what really is going on here? And I was aware that she was in a conservatorship because I've been a Britney fan since I was a teenager. So I knew that she was in a conservatorship, but I didn't at that time know what a conservatorship really was. It's not something that I gave a lot of thought to.
Right. It's not a word you hear.
It's not a word you used to hear. Now you do. But yeah. And then I have a background in investigative journalism. I'm a journalist comedian. So I kind of had like my reporter brain on, and in preparing the show notes for the show, I started to like dig around to what was going on in her court case. And I found a document that said that there was a hearing coming up for the conservator of all her. So basically a conservatorship in California has two parts. There's someone that can be in charge of your person, who comes over, what medicines you take, what doctors you go to, things like that. And then there's a conservatorship of your estate, which is who's in charge of all your money, basically.
Yeah.
And I saw that the person that was in charge of all her money was going to the court to petition for a raise for like $250,000 a year. And I was like, oh God, that like everything I understand about conservatorships, like that doesn't seem like it should really be like a for-profit position. That's kind of weird. Yeah. I just was curious about the situation. So I went to that court hearing. I was like the only reporter there. It was an empty courtroom. Nobody else was really interested in what was going on.
Weird.
And he got that raise. And
was this her father?
Her father was one of those people, and I don't know if Jamie was there that day, actually. I think he might have been on the phone. But her father was working with an attorney who I dead ass, this guy's name was Andrew Wallet.
Awful. Hack. What a hack.
Yeah. Oh no, Jamie wasn't there because at that now I know that he was sick in the hospital, which was the guise they used for Britney eventually disappearing from the public eye. But so I'll try to keep this as succinct as possible. It's a really crazy story.
So I'm on the edge of my seat.
So I go to the courthouse that day, and I come back, and like on that episode of the show, I report back to Babs like everything that I saw and happened, and that's really the episode where the show kind of shifted into becoming basically a true crime show. And so I became really, really consumed with what was going on with this case, and I just kept I started talking to people in the conservatorship abuse community and finding out what a conservatorship was. I realized at that point the degree to which a conservatorship, I mean, it's people in guardianship abuse and in conservatorship abuse advocacy, they say it's essentially like a legal death. When you're in a conservatorship, you cease to be a person in the eyes of the law. You don't have the right to sign a contract. You literally lose all of your rights as an adult person.
Wow.
So I really, really was paying very close attention to what was going on there. And then about a month into that, she canceled what was going to be a 3-year residency in Vegas, which at the time was going to be it was going to break records for how much money she was going to be making in this residency.
Okay.
And the reason she gave for canceling it was that her father was sick and that she needed to take care of him. And I was really suspicious about that because at that point I knew enough about her relationship with her father. I was like, something doesn't smell right there.
Yeah.
And then I was also like 3 years. It was a 3-year engagement though. Like you're canceling a 3-year engagement to take care of a sick. Nothing about it really passed the smell test for me.
Totally.
So she announced that she was canceling that residency, and then she completely disappeared from the public eye for like months. And again, Babs and I, we were hyper aware of that because we had a podcast about her Instagram. So like it was like she went from posting sometimes 2 or 3 times a day to just radio silence.
Yeah.
And the longer she was gone, the more it was like, well, a picture of her is going to be worth a lot to paparazzi right now. I mean, nobody was spotting her.
Right.
So we started talking on the show. We called it the Britney hiatus. We were like, where is Britney? And at that point, you know, we guessed. There are episodes where we sort of actually did predict what was going on. Like, I don't know if she's locked up somewhere. Like, I don't know what's going on, but she's missing.
Yeah.
So after she had been out of the public eye for like, I think it was like 3.5 months, a story broke in like Deadline or Hollywood Reporter, one of those outlets, saying that she had checked herself into a mental health facility. And then right after that story broke, there was a meme posted to her account that said something like, sometimes it was like, fall in love with your taking care of yourself. And then the caption said, sometimes we all just need a little me time. But instead of using an emoji, they use like the semicolon parenthetical. And because, again, we were so forensic about her Instagram, we were like, oh, Britney doesn't use emoticons. She uses emojis. Like, she didn't write this post. I was like, no, she didn't write this post. And I'm like, and everything I know about conservatorships now at this point, like, I don't think she even has the legal right to decide to put herself somewhere. So I was like, nothing about this is making sense.
Right. You're like social media detectives.
Yeah.
Totally.
So we released an episode sort of expressing those doubts and those suspicions. And on that show, we had like a voicemail box, which originally, when it was a comedy show, was just for people to leave their like silly thoughts on her Instagram. Like this minion meme is like, you know, our Chernobyl or whatever. Like it was, we would just play these like silly voicemails at the end of the show. So I was editing the following week's episode and I checked our voicemail box. And I noticed a voicemail that was longer than the rest of them. And I was like, it was like 11 p.m. I like had my after work beer cracked. I was like, ready to like export the episode. And,
end of the day.
And then I was like, well, I don't even really know why I clicked on it, except that it was like longer than most of our voicemails. And the voicemail was from a paralegal who was like, I can't say my name or who I am, but I'm a paralegal who's involved in Britney's conservatorship, and you guys are on to something. And he was like, Britney has been in an institution since January. This was like April. And he's like, it was not her decision to go at all. And what is going on is disturbing, to say the least. But, you know, that was the gist.
Was that like the first hardcore piece of like intel?
Yeah.
And that's game. That sounds like a game changer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, in this time, this was 2019. Nobody was talking about Britney's conservatorship. Like, I mean, this was not nobody was talking about it. And so, my stomach just sank. I had goosebumps. Like, it was like, oh my God. So I called Babs, who was doing comedy in Austin. I played it for her. I was like, I think you need to come home. Like, this is huge.
Wow.
She came home. We spent that entire weekend vetting who this person was. I followed up with them, got proof of where they work and all that, and had a much more extensive conversation with them. I talked to every lawyer that I'm friends with, every editor I've ever worked for about libel law and stuff like that. I mean, at this point, this was a show we were making in my garage. Like, this was like a tiny show. And,
have you written the script for this yet? Jeez Louise. And so we, you know, because we are also comedians who like understand, we made the decision to release this voicemail. And on that episode, or like a separate episode, was it a separate thing?
We made like a separate episode, and we called it like an emergency episode. And we knew enough about the internet to where we were like, okay, we need to release this in the middle of the night so that like it's too big for them to contain by the time anyone on her team finds out about this. And Babs had the idea of like, why don't we take, because we want this to move quickly online, why don't we take a page from like Firefest and have some kind of a really simple graphic that can just kind of like appear everywhere all of a sudden. So she designed that pink square that says like #FreeBritney. And we literally were like, pink? I don't know. Yeah, pink. And
Sure,
like,
yeah.
There was a couple conversations about like, what should the hashtag be? And it was just like, we'll do #FreeBritney, put it on a pink square and call it. So we released it in the middle of the night. That was one of the craziest nights of my life. I didn't sleep at all.
Whoa.
And it was really, really bizarre just watching it like, and it did exactly sort of what we wanted it to do. It just exploded on the internet.
Oh, wow.
And I think at like 7:30 that morning, her mom, Britney's mom, started like liking Free Britney posts. And then she posted like this kind of Christian meme that essentially kind of implied that we were right. Yeah. And that was like very validating, because that was a terrifying night. It was like, oh God, I hope we're, it was like, oh God, what did we just do? But when
it's like, you're just like, all the lights are lighting up across the world, ding, 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 with all this Free Britney stuff just from you striking the match.
Yes.
Wow.
So then after Lynn sort of started, I think that also validated things for like the media and stuff like that. And it became like, it was like one of the stories on The Talk, and Babs and I went on Entertainment Tonight that day. I mean, it literally happened overnight, but like that day, all day long, I spent on the phone with like different outlets and appearing on different things and talking to different, and that sort of continued for the next 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were an active part of that process, as someone who had uncovered this, like the Free Britney process. Like, what role did you play, or were you like doing I'm sure you've been talking about this for so much. I'm sorry if I'm beating a horse, but how was that for you for the next 2 years?
It was a lot of things. It was stressful. It was exhausting. It was interesting. It was inspiring a lot of times, definitely, because it brought together people all around the world. I became very entrenched in like the disability rights community, because really what happened with this happening to Britney is that this whole population of people who had really been living in invisibility and suffering conservatorship abuse, like suddenly had a light shined on what was going on with them. And sort of like right away, we started being contacted by people who, were close to Britney or had worked with her in the past, or just had much more direct knowledge of what was going on with her. So then it became this thing of like, what do we do with this? Like, we can't keep doing this in my garage,
Right.
And so then that's when we made the decision to like partner up. We worked with Stitcher to make Toxic. And so a lot of it was just, doing reporting work, talking to sources, going to court, reading documents, following what was going on, and just.
You were big time in the weeds. You were in it.
Oh yeah. It was my whole life.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. That sounds like intense. So, I mean, that was a podcast. This is a podcast. You have multiple podcasts.
Yes.
So like, I'm brand new to this. And so I'm sure so many people are as well. This is, my 10th or something episode. And if like thinking about the podcast industry in general, what would you say that the qualities are that someone needs to find their place in it or enjoy it? I know those are different questions, but I'm just super interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always tell people that one of the most important things is really consistency. I think a lot of people start a podcast and then maybe they release regularly for like 3 episodes and then it falls off. And Lady to Lady, we have released every single Wednesday for the last 11 years.
I love that. That's so cool. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I am just a big believer. I think like for your audience, like podcast listeners, they just like to know like Tuesdays I get this show. Like they just like to, they start to become kind of like habitual listeners, and they like that consistency. So I'm a big fan of like a consistent release time. And then I think you just have to like talking to people, I guess.
Yeah. Totally. I love that. Well, then that's good. That's good. I think I'm on the right track. I like doing this. I want to talk to people because so much, like you said, at the end of shows, you just kind of chit chat for a little while. So it's nice to actually get to know somebody on a more real or personal level. What's the format for Lady to Lady? It's you and Babs.
And Brandy Posey.
Oh, I'm Brady Cozy. Nice.
So it's a chat show. It's a comedy chat show. It's very, very silly. We have a fourth guest on very often. That person is female or non-binary, but we have guys on too. And we play sleepover games. We answer advice. It's just like a fun, silly. We describe it as like a sleepover for your ears.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
My ears could use some sleep. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. So you've been in comedy, doing stand-up as well for a long time. Can you tell me just a little bit about your comedy journey?
Yeah. So let's see. I guess I kind of feel like I always knew I wanted to do comedy. Like I was a class clown for sure. That's my favorite way of getting attention, definitely. And
do you remember any jokes you told as a kid, like in class?
Yeah, I mean they weren't necessarily like jokes, but I was I remember in home ec, it was a social studies class, but that teacher also taught home ec, and I got in trouble all the time for shit like this. But she had some big kind of hat she'd gotten from another country somewhere hanging up because she was a social studies teacher, and while she was talking, I sneaked behind her and grabbed the hat, and then I climbed up on the sinks and started dancing, and everybody was laughing for 30 seconds before she realized what was going on. So I would do shit like that all the time.
I love that. That's oh yeah, she's gonna be a comedian.
Yeah.
It just makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So as a comedian, when did you start doing stand up?
Yeah, I started stand up. Gosh, I feel like other people are so good about their stand up anniversaries or whatever, but I think it was 2007. I had, after college, I had gotten real into improv and sketch and stuff like that. I did Groundlings and that whole game.
Oh, nice.
Which I really, really loved. But I didn't honestly, I started doing stand-up. It was a really practical decision. I was well, improv classes are very expensive and open mics are free.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was a huge part of why I started doing open mics, because they were free. And then I was also I don't want to wait to have to register for an improv class. I want something where I can just write something and test it out tonight. So that's why, so I started doing stand up around then, and I really kind of immediately fell in love with it.
Yeah, no, that's one of the beautiful things of stand up is that I get to work on this bit and then go do it tonight. It's so gratifying in that way, and ways that other art forms, other crafts are not, because it's nobody's cheering for a brush stroke. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what scares people that don't do stand up about it, is the fact that it is just you. There's nobody else to fall back on. If it doesn't go well, it is just you. But I think there's something, like you said, very lovely about that too. It's if you come up with a good idea, you can sketch it out in your notebook, and you can find somewhere to see if it works within the next 7 hours.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And what is your stand-up schedule like these days? Are you on the road a lot? We met in Oregon. What's that like for you?
Not a ton. I'm recording an album in Reno on March 22nd.
Reno, baby.
Yeah.
Why Reno?
I actually love that area. I always have really fun shows in Tahoe. And so I didn't want to do it. I'm from the Los Angeles area, so I didn't really want to do it down here, just because I didn't want to try to I didn't want my audience for my album to be other comics. No offense to other comics, but
you can offend them. We're easily offended.
Yeah. So I was just kind of thinking of places where I always enjoy myself, and honestly, Eugene is another place that I always love coming up to. But yeah,
that's awesome. That's so cool. And so because one of the things we connected on our Eagles fandom.
Yes, go Birds.
Go Birds, fly Eagles fly. It's so fun to meet a fellow Eagles fan. I'm immediately thick as thieves with everybody I've ever met who likes the Eagles.
Oh, it's so true. It's tribalism at its finest. I don't know what it is, but I'll be on a run and I'll see someone wearing an Eagle shirt or something, and I just kind of have this Pavlovian Go Birds response, and it is
I can't stop. Go Birds.
Yeah, it's a great feeling, and it is. It's just right away we are kind of in the same tribe.
Yeah, I went to see Lizzie Cooperman at the club here in Eugene that same weekend that we performed together, and there was a guy with an Eagles hat on in the parking garage afterwards, and we had a 7 sentence conversation about Jalen Hurts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how you do it. But you were not a born Eagles fan. You said you married into Eagles fandom. What was that like for you? Like entering this world of sports fandom as a non-Eagles fan?
It was, well, I've always been a big Dodgers fan. So I love sports, definitely. Like it wasn't that hard of a sell for me because I love going to games and I love sports. But Los Angeles never, until recently, I mean, there was like the Raiders when I was really little, and then we just got 2 teams, which is ridiculous because we didn't even want one. But anyway.
Right. So are people like over the football teams, American football teams?
Well, in Los Angeles, they've never were under them. Like the Super Bowl was here. Not only was the Super Bowl here, but the LA Rams were playing in the Super Bowl in Los Angeles. And I knew people who didn't know it was the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay.
Yeah. So that's where I grew up. And so I didn't have a football team just sort of because I just didn't have a default one. And my dad isn't like a big football guy. But my husband like bleeds green. I mean, his whole family does. It's very like Silver Linings Playbook, like huge Eagles fans. So when I started dating him, I mean, it was like the Eagles were going to be in my life, whether I liked it or not. So I think just by osmosis, I just sort of fell into it, and I love it. I think it's a blast. I think it's really fun.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's a way that I connect with people at the gym and stuff. You know, the people I talk with the most, he's an Eagles fan, and it's just like his idea is that Kelsey should retire and become the Eagles mascot. Like that's what
I love that.
Perfect. Yeah, have Kelsey in the bird suit or whatever. Like he should be a part of the organization forever, and I think he wants that.
I think he wants that too. I think it was really cute to see how supportive he was of Travis. I mean, Jason Kelsey's speech at the parade after they won was, I thought, just like a highlight of that parade. Like,
which you were at, you said.
I was not. My husband went.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he booked the tickets like it was like we won, and then he drunkenly booked the tickets on his cell phone 30 seconds later. Like, because I think the parade was a couple days later.
Gotcha.
But I don't think I was able to go because it was very like I'm going to Philly tomorrow. But he had a great time. Yeah,
that's so great.
I was just laughing my ass off. It was just that parade. The thing I love about being an Eagles fan is just Philly is so fucking Philly. Like the fact that they had to grease the light poles because people were going to climb them. Like I love that.
Yeah, there's this like, just like, like that can only be described in grunts. I think sometimes the ethos of an Eagles fan or a sports fan.
Yeah, but like Eagles fans, I always think about the like "no one likes us, we don't care" chant, and like to me, that's so quintessentially Eagles. Like
for sure, and what builds a stronger bond than that sentiment? Exactly. You know, like we are us. We don't care about the rest of the whatever, and we're just gonna fucking be Eagles fans through and through.
Exactly.
I love that so much, and so. Another thing that you talked about on stage is like your physical fitness pursuits and running marathons and stuff like that. What has your fitness journey been like? What does it look like these days, and what has your gym been recently?
Yeah, so I actually, unlike comedy, I mean, I grew up dancing. I was a theater kid, so I danced like my whole life. Which at the time I didn't really realize like that was a kind of sport, but now as an adult I'm like dancing is such a fucking sport.
Totally.
So that was really my deal. And honestly, I was also a child actor, so like my parents actually were like, you don't have time for sports. So it wasn't even really something that I was on my radar until I was like 18. And then when I was in college, I got really into practicing yoga, which I'm still very, like, yoga is still a really big part of my life. And that really shifted my whole, I mean, it changed my life. Like, I don't know. It's so central to everything that I do and the person that I am and, like, how I'm able to handle stress and stuff like that. So, and that really, like, changed my connection with my body and my understanding of how important exercise is. And I think I run like a yogi. I think yoga and running are very, very similar. Running is such a mental sport. So yoga is really what got me working out a lot. And then from there, I had a gig. I taught senior citizens aerobics for a couple of years in my 20s.
Ooh, I love this. How was it?
Oh, it was one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. It was a blast. I loved it. So those two things kind of got me into working out a lot. And then in my late 20s, my sister-in-law was like, would you want to run a half marathon with me? And I was like, no, let's run a full marathon. Like, I was like, what's the point? I'm like, well, let's just fucking do it, you know? And
Yeah.
I guess my thought was like, you run a half marathon when you're training for a full, like, just do it, you know? So
Do the whole thing.
yeah.
I'm not saving it for a snack.
Yeah. Which, so I ran my first marathon sometime in my late 20s. And then I don't know how that addicted me, because it was every marathon I've run has been just one of the most painful, difficult, soul crushing, crazy experiences of my life. But so transformative. Like that.
Yeah.
Also, each marathon I've run has profoundly changed me mentally, spiritually.
Wow.
I've learned something new about myself, because what happens when you're running a marathon, it's very similar to me to doing like a hallucinogen. Like you get to a point where you literally don't have like an ego or a sense of yourself. Like the only way to finish a marathon is to just kind of reach this state of zen that just transcends everything. And like you are able to push past so much further than what all of us think we can push past. Like, it's so interesting to me to like explore the space sort of beyond your perceived threshold.
Yeah. When you get to that point and you're like, oh, I'm floating in time and space right now.
Yeah.
And I want to see how long I can stay up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many marathons have you run?
7.
Golly. Yeah. What is it with comedians and Andrist? I had Andy Andrist. He was a marathoner as well. There are several others I've had as well who run marathons. I'm like, why do we love punishing ourselves so much?
I mean, I think, maybe it's punishing ourselves, but I also think it's like, that's interesting. I wonder what it is about comedians. I mean, I think the most interesting thing about the relationship between running and creativity is, number one, with both of them, you need to show up when you don't feel like it. You need to have a consistent practice. And like I said, you can do so much more than you think you can do. Like the things that seem impossible to you are possible if you just break them up into like chunks and allow yourself to grow and get stronger. And I think that's actually very similar to the process of getting better at comedy. Like, you just need to show up, eat shit, be in pain, come back, keep going. Like, I think they're actually very similar pursuits.
I totally agree in so many ways. Have you ever read Murakami's What I Talk About When I Talk About Running? Yeah,
it's one of my favorite books.
It's so good. Like,
it's so good.
It's also totally a parallel to every artistic endeavor. And it's just, I haven't read it in a while, but I would love to reread it.
Yeah, sometimes before I'm heading out for like a really long training run, I will like just kind of like flip to a random page in that book just for something to meditate on, because that book is incredible.
It's so good. That guy as a writer blows my mind. Have you read any of his other work?
Yeah, I'm almost actually finished with his whole canon.
Wow.
I think I have to recommend, or what's the Commandor? I forget what that was titled, but I fucking love Murakami. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What was your first Murakami you ever read?
I started with Wind Up Bird Chronicle. How about
okay. It was Kafka on the Shore.
Oh, I love Kafka on the Shore.
So freaky. This guy is a freak. And do you know his story? Are you familiar with his story at all, as far as how he became a writer?
Only insofar as like he describes it in what I talk about when I talk about running.
Yeah. Well, he was just running like as far as I know, a jazz bar in Tokyo, and kind of writing on the side. He submitted this. The first one that he recently released, actually, in the last few years, but he submitted it to some kind of writing competition. 8 months later, they wrote back and they're like, "This is a book, you win." And then essentially he just started writing books, And and I just love that. It's the same thing with comedy. Essentially, it's like, oh, how do I do it? I do it by doing it. It's like I love reading process books. I love finding out more information about working out and stand-up comedy and doing the exercises. But at the same time, you just got to put your shoes on and go.
That's the thing. And that's I think the crux of what he's talking about and what I talk about when I talk about running. Exactly. But that's kind of crazy, right? I don't know. Just knowing Murakami, like he's the most unique writer I think I've ever read. Like his point of view is so specific, and his approach to like the
Mm-hmm.
human psyche and his I don't recommend Murakami to everyone because he's not for everyone.
He's not. No, yeah. Unless you want to read for 12 pages about like a tuna fish sandwich. Like he talks about food a lot in
Yes.
his writing. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, I love the guy. He's kind of similar to Steinbeck in that way. I'm a big Steinbeck guy. But he can just write for pages about a blade of grass, it seems like.
Yeah.
And whatever they talk about, there's something magical and very alive about it that just comes out off of the page.
Yes. Yeah. And also, yeah, I love Steinbeck too. And I think on the Murakami tip, like things that like a blade of grass or like food, I kind of could just read about indefinitely. Like I actually love when people write about food.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That
I just read that Gentleman in Moscow last year, and like if you like reading about food, that is a great book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How is your relationship with reading physical books?
I that's another of my addictions.
Yeah.
I recently got a Kindle like last year, which I held off for so long because I'm so into like hard
Oh,
copy books.
nice. You're a book
But
person.
I'm such a book person. But it was like, okay, do I really want to bring 3 hardcovers in a suitcase with me every time I go on vacation? So I wrote down that, and I love my Kindle because I can read in bed and stuff. So I always have like a Kindle book, a hard copy book, and an audio book going.
That's so good. What's on your book stand these days?
Let's see. I'm reading a collection of short stories by Jhumpa Lahiri called Interpreter of Maladies, which is incredible. She won the Pulitzer for that. That was her first book, and she won a Pulitzer for it.
Oh, wow.
I really, really I'm loving that. And my Kindle is something that I'm reading for work that I sort of can't discuss yet.
Okay, great. Good. Exciting.
Yeah. And then my audiobook, this is, I clenched my jaw, so I'm listening to an audiobook about jaw posture.
Oh, jaw posture. I bet that will help with breathing as well.
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have breathing challenges?
Not that I was aware of, but listening to this book makes me realize that I may, like when I'm sleeping, breathe through my mouth. So I've started this, like, I'm trying to tape my mouth closed when I sleep.
You're taping.
Yeah, I'm taping.
Oh, no. I have my nose breathe right strip on because I breathe horribly almost all the time. And every time I see someone get their mouth taped in a movie, I get a tiny anxiety attack because I'm just like, oh my God, I would die. I would literally die if I was chucked in a trunk and someone was covering my mouth. It freaks me out. How has the mouth taping been for you?
You know, I've only been doing it for like 3 nights, but I'm actually surprised by how well I'm sleeping with it on. Like, I actually feel like I'm sleeping better with it.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
That's really I think sleep is the key to unlock everything else.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right.
And that's the hardest thing about doing comedy a lot of times, and maintaining a level of like physical activity and fitness that is healthy and good, because you get all jazzed up at 11 p.m. and then it's like, where do you go from there? You know, like, oh yeah, we get drunk or
Right.
whatever.
Right. Yeah, no, I find it really hard to come down from the adrenaline of a set. Like, definitely. Yeah. And then again, if you're like a gym person, I do like to work out in the morning. So that is like a calculus I have to do a lot of, like, okay, I want to get enough sleep, but I also like want to wake up and get in a run or go to a class or something. And like, both of those things are going to make me feel good. So which one do I choose? And I usually go with the workout over the sleep if I have to choose.
Yeah. No, that's fair. A bad workout's better than no workout is what I always say. But it's also like, sometimes you do have to know when that 1 out of 5 times is that you shouldn't go. Because sometimes it's probably the time to take a day off. Do you have any challenges with like pushing the brakes on stuff that you love?
Yeah, that's like my whole life challenge.
Yeah. What can I? It's great. I love that, and it's so fun. Because I feel like I'm in the zone at the gym. You know, like in the middle of a good set on stage. It is very similar to how I feel when I'm working through a great workout, and that's something that you can do every day, as much as you want, or at least that's how I see it. But I have a hard time not just pushing the gas full bore. do you have anything that you do to kind of like help temper all that intense excitement about the things you're doing?
I mean, I think the only thing that tempers them is each other. Like the only
Mm,
like I am so passionate about so many different things that like by virtue of that, it's like I'm going to read because I'm addicted to reading, and so that means
mm-hmm,
that like I'll be doing that maybe instead of writing jokes, and then because I have a show that night, that means I'm not going to be taking dance class that night. So like I think
mm-hmm.
my different passions kind of like temper each other.
Mm. And
Yeah.
so you're good at just being able to balance priorities like that.
Yeah, I think I always want like kind of a little bit from everything. So I sort of
Mm-hmm.
naturally just toggle from one thing to the next.
How do you find that your physical and mental health impact your comedy and your performance space?
Oh, I mean, they're completely intrinsically related. I mean, I think the myth that you need to be mentally ill or unhappy to be funny is so damaging and it's such bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you're doing well mentally and physically, and you mentioned flow state, I mean, I think that working out and putting yourself in that flow state as often as possible, like that teaches your brain to access that flow state more easily.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in flow that you're going to come up with that great joke, and it's in flow that you're going to be on stage and really connecting with the audience. And I think that you're not going to be as creative if you're mired in sadness or anxiety. I mean, you're just not,
Mm-hmm.
your brain doesn't have the bandwidth to kind of like explore different ideas and go down different weird rabbit holes when it's busy saying the same story on repeat over and over again. Or
Totally. Yeah. And so that's just the conversation that I want to continue to encourage. That's what is important to me. Like you said, I think it's so damaging when people just keep going down that path of like, "Oh, I'm a dumb piece of shit. Let's watch everyone laugh at me for it." Because then you get that feedback from that and you're like, "Oh,
yes,
yay, it's great that I'm a dumb piece of shit." And it's like, well, you can do a lot of other things. You're making people laugh, you're doing so much cool stuff. And so I don't necessarily think that, maybe this is weird, but like I don't think that comedians are empowered enough to like take that mindset. But I don't know, I do you think the conversation's changing around comedy and health?
that's a good question. I mean, I definitely think it might be because I think a lot of the people, like a lot of the stars in comedy right now, are people who kind of have their shit together. And by the way, I mean, some of the people that I think are hilarious are the people you're describing, where like I'm a dumb piece of
Totally.
shit. I
Totally.
think they're fucking hilarious. And like if that works for them, I'm like, you're making me laugh. Whatever
Go
you need
for
to
it.
do, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think about someone like Taylor Tomlinson is like just crushing it right now, and
Yeah.
she seems like someone who's sort of very healthy and kind of just has her shit together. And I would imagine, I don't know if how often she works out, but I don't know. I think a lot of the people who are kind of stars in comedy right now are healthy people.
Have you seen her new special?
Not yet. Is it good?
Yeah, I
Love
haven't
it.
seen it either. I hear it's really good. I was just surprised that another one just dropped because I was like, didn't
She's
she just
so prolific. It's insane.
release one last year? So what's your take on this? I was talking about this with some comedian friends. Do you think the special a year is good for comedy and comedians or individual comedians in general, or what's your take on like an hour a year?
I think actually, Rudy, can I plug in my computer in real quick and you ask
Go
me that
for it.
again? Okay, cool.
Yeah, for sure. Computer's alive.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
running.
All right. So especially year. Yeah. I mean, I think it just depends on the person. Sure, if you have that desire to do that. I mean, I think it also depends on like I comedy isn't sort of my only creative pursuit. Like I write a lot too, so I don't know
Mm,
if that would be feasible for me. I mean, I think that is sort of a downside of being someone who has a lot of interest. Like I would have to probably stop doing a lot of the other types of writing I do in
hmm.
order to produce a special a year.
That's a
Um,
lot. Yeah.
and I think to be generating an hour a year, it's pretty unlikely, if not borderline impossible, that someone who's very new to comedy is going to be producing something that people want to consume at
Right.
that degree. So I think that the only people who probably have the the chops to be producing at that level, probably even doing comedy for a really long time.
Yeah. The people that are dropping a yearly hour are the ones that are on tour all the time. They got all this stuff. And it's like, it's great to see. It's impressive. Kyle just did another, Kanane just dropped his second one in the last year or so, which was very cool to see all that stuff. So you're doing your special. You're recording in Reno, March 22nd. Is that what you said? March 22nd. Where's it going to be at?
It's at the Arch Society, which is this very cool bar that's like in the back of a thrift store.
Uh-huh.
Very cool, kind of funky bar, and it's going to be part of Don't Tell. Oh wait, I don't think I'm allowed to say that.
Oh.
Are you allowed to say that? I forget. I don't know what the rules. No, they must be allowed to.
I
Anyway,
th I think you can. I'm doing one
okay,
here. We're doing one in Eugene. We just can't say all the details.
okay,
I
okay,
don't.
okay. So it's part of Don't Tell Comedy, and I'm very,
Yeah,
very excited. Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
What is your like what's your big picture, your greater art, comedic artistic vision for this special? Have you like do you have it all mapped out? Do you know where you're going with it all? Like do you have the bits in order and stuff like that? Where are you in the process?
I think I'm getting close. I'm sort of like in the tweaking phase right now.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm at the phase where I'm like listening through to sets and kind of like finding areas where like, okay, can I punch that up? Or like I would like that to be a little bit more jokey there and just sort of at that and probably tweaking the order a little bit, but I think I have a pretty good sense of the order I want to go in
Yeah.
and just trying to make it feel like a cohesive and sort of loathe the use of term, but something like
Yeah.
not a one woman
Peace.
show, but like I want you to feel like, okay, this is me, rather
Yeah.
than some like arbitrarily thrown together jokes in random order. I'm trying to create sort of an idea. Like
Right.
yeah.
The brand, the identity is you, right? And people want it to be authentic and unique to you should be the only one who can tell 90% of those jokes is how I.
100%. Yes.
So you're at 100. I said 90%. You said 100%.
I think 100. Yes.
Well, I told a joke last night on stage that we about Joseph Pilates. I did this Pilates bit, and I used some of the joke punch ups that we were chatting about at the end of our show the other week, and it went over well. I was like, hell yeah,
I love
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's so nice when you can kind of just riff with other comedians and then find that kind of the humor organically. Do you do a lot of your writing on your own? Do you like to like riff with other people to kind of build inspiration and ideas or what's
Yeah,
that kind of like for you?
I do like riffing with other people a lot. I mean, I feel like very fortunate because I have a really solid friend group in comedy and like particularly like with Lady to Lady. That's for the most part, if I tour with Lady to Lady because that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the other great thing about having a podcast is you have listeners all over the country who will come see you. Um,
Totally.
and then being a three-person job, it's like we're kind of just like a self-contained comedy show, so we can sort of each go to 20 minutes, have somebody in town open for us and
Totally.
we get to like travel with our friends. And so because the three of us do comedy so much together, we are always sort of like riffing on each other and offering different ideas for tags and stuff like that. And then my husband, I also met doing stand up, so
Mm.
we give each other tags a lot. With him, it's kind of funny. Like sometimes something will happen to us, and it's like, are you taking that, or can I? Or
Yeah, who gets that story?
yeah,
You could do a Sklar Brothers type thing.
yeah,
Yeah, that is kind of funny sometimes because you're like, oh, yeah, who gets that one? But you just draw straws or.
yeah. I mean, that off because normally like one of us, it obviously has like some more fun take on it or feels more strongly about turning it into a bit. But yeah,
Yeah, no, that's so cool. I love that. So you're working out, you're on the road. What's your I guess I'm kind of jumping around. What's your go-to running music these days?
oh, good question. I have such random, like eclectic taste in music. Like I think if someone else listened to my running playlist, they would really see how unhinged I am.
Yeah,
I mean, I listen to a lot of bullshit pop. I love bullshit pop.
love it.
Um,
Aaron Morris.
yes, yep. I mean, just like Beyonce. Like I'm very
Yeah,
like some really just basic shit.
yeah.
Britney Spears, Taylor Swift, like that kind of shit. And then
Heck yeah.
I'm also like a former raver, so I've never gotten over my love of house music. And like
There you go.
one of my favorite runs is like if I can get out to the beach and just put on like some digweed or like something like that and just listen to house music and run along the ocean for like an hour and a half, like that is heaven.
Oh yeah. There is something I appreciate so much about running which is just getting the shoes on and being able to go do it. Like that's such a cool aspect. And I think that's like a couple other friends. Like when you're touring, when you're on the road, it's a great way to see a town, great way to see
Oh
a new
yeah.
place. You get to run around. You got your Fat Boy Slim in your ears, and you're just like, oh, this is a great city or whatever, you know?
100%. Because like I think running, one of the things I find so addictive about it is it just like opens up your aperture. So like you're just
Mm-hmm.
in everything in such a
Mm.
deep way, and you're just appreciating your surroundings. That's really kind of cool and profound way. And like I love going to a new city and going on a long. I mean, Eugene is one of my favorite places to run. I mean, there's great running in Eugene.
It is built for running. It's the world's greatest city of outdoors and the arts, is what they like to say, or
I,
something like that.
I don't disagree. Yeah, you guys
There's
got the pre-trail there. I mean, yeah, Nike, of course. Yes.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I and there's something great about running in the rain. Like I do love a workout outside in the mist. You're like, "Oh, fuck the elements. Man versus nature. We're doing it. Like we're in it." And it just feels so connecting in a way.
100%. It's like this really primal, like you feel like a kid again, kind of like playing in the mud. You're
Yeah.
dirty and wet, and like, yeah, I love that feeling too. Yeah, and it's
it-
funny because like if I'm not running, I'm the biggest wuss with being cold and with rain. Like you will not catch me standing in the rain in like regular clothes for 5 minutes, but I
yeah.
will go on a 2 mile or like a 2 hour run in the rain, no problem.
Yeah, yeah, when I'm in the sweat zone, when I'm in the splash zone, like it's anything's game, you know. It's like I just am such a sweaty mess. I'm like I get chided at gyms for how sweaty I am. Like that
There.
it's not, but
You
it
can
happens.
sweat at the gym. Come on.
That's what I said. It started in Korea, but uh when I was in Korea, I was like the only guy working out at this old gym in a basement. Nobody was under 60 and nobody else was not Korean. And the guy who worked there once, he was like, the other members have complained about your wetness. And I'm like, oh no, my
You're
wetness.
sweating.
And it's not like I wasn't cleaning stuff up, but I'm a drippy guy and it happens, you know. So it's like one of those things. It's like, oh, that's a great way to take something I'm self-conscious about and amplify it even more, you know.
And like something that you don't have any control over.
Yeah. Well, Koreans are not a sweaty people. Like you have to go to like you I would have to go to foreign stores to buy right guard or whatever, and it would be like $12 for a stick of deodorant because it was imported because it's so hard to find in Korea, which is
Wow.
so yeah, it's so weird.
Do you
What's
try
your
hot yoga ever?
I have not tried hot yoga. No, I haven't. I've done normal yoga plenty and I'm sweating within 10 minutes big time. Like I get going. Like what's hot yoga like compared to normal yoga?
Oh, it's very hot. I mean,
It's name says it all.
it's I mean, I think it's part. I think you'd feel at home there. I mean, it's very like part of the process. Like everybody
Yeah,
in the class is just no one really wears any clothes because they would just stick to you. The rooms are
yeah,
teeny and like talk about going into like the flow state. It is. I guess it's kind of similar to distance running in that it becomes a mind over matter thing like very quickly.
yeah. No, I haven't been to a yoga class in a while. I go to some classes. I do some group fitness at the gym. I like group fitness. I like it's so fun to get hot and sweaty with other people.
Yeah.
And you're like, we're doing this together. Like this is good. Like I would love to teach some fitness. Like I love that idea of like teaching older folks at a retirement home or whatever. That sounds so much fun. My mom goes to classes. She's like raving about her fitness instructor, you know, her water aerobics instructor and stuff like that. Oh my God, it's so great.
And like also teaching old people like that was one of the best things I could have done in my early 20s because it totally for the rest of my life, like has impacted my view of age, really, because
Mm-hmm.
I was in my early 20s, and I had this epiphany, which really should have been obvious, was just like, oh, old people are just people that got old. Like I
Yeah.
think we have this kind of like very monolithic view that all old people are the same, but they contain just as many multitudes as every other age of people.
Mm-hmm.
And um and it also, like, I'm not someone who complains about my age or calls myself old, because I used to line dance with 90-year-olds, and I know what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it really ups the gratitude when you get to hang out with older individuals because they have so much wisdom and you see what they can and can't do.
Mhm.
Like on both sides of that. I think it's really important to spend time with people of a variety of ages because you can glean so much from everybody.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And another thing too, like in regards to old people, is like it's really like opened my eyes up to the importance of staying active as we age. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my grandparents are both still around. They're in their 90s. They both still go to the gym.
Love it.
It's something that's available to all of us, and it doesn't need to be hot yoga. You don't need to run a marathon. Just like moving, doing
Mm-hmm.
something to create that mind body connection is so good for you mentally and physically, and there's just so many preventative benefits, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
about looking hot or having a certain kind of body at all.
Nope. I mean, those are byproducts that a lot of people get into fitness for, and I think that may work for some folks, but it's so much more rewarding when you're like doing it because you love doing it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what'll keep you going. But for at least that's what'll keep me going is like the process is so enjoyable. I like the challenge of it. And I've recently changed how I train in a way that's a lot more functional and a lot more movement based on like how can my body hips, shoulders, and spine. That's what I want people to focus on is hips, shoulders, and spine. If you do one thing for your hips, shoulders, and spine every day starting now, you will feel better forever.
That's right. Yeah. And exactly, when you think about how many nerves we have in our spine and how that connects to your brain, and yeah, how much tension we carry in our hips and shoulders, and what does that do
Mm,
mentally if you're not releasing that?
mm-hmm.
Bigger than I want to look good in a bathing suit.
Yeah.
And I get very annoyed because, like, in Los Angeles, obviously it's Los Angeles, and I really hate when I go to a group fitness class and the instructor says something like, bathing suit season's coming up, do another squat. And I know they're trying to
Mm,
motivate. Like, that is so not where my desire to work out comes from. And I think that kind of messaging turns a lot of people off of
yep.
working out.
I think it makes it more exclusive instead of inclusive because no matter where you go, no matter where your body gets, you're still gonna have those little niggling thoughts around, oh no, I look this way or I feel this way. Like people who look great don't always feel great.
They don't.
In
You're never
large
going
part,
to reach that point that you think you're going to reach where you're like, I did it, I'm done.
yeah,
It's never going to approach.
100%. One of my old yoga teachers, she called hips your emotional junk drawers. And I just loved it. It stuck with me for years because it's like, oh, if your hips aren't happy, you're probably not going to be happy either.
Oh.
So,
And I've
yeah.
experienced that in yoga. I mean, some of the shit that will come out when you really do a deep stretch in your hips, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't thought about that in years. Or like, I guess I am thinking about that. And like, your body will just like literally release like the stories that you're keeping in your
Yeah,
body, which is fascinating to me.
it totally is. And, the hips and shoulders and spine, think about all the ways they can move, which just means you can open up so much in them. Like there's so much space. When your shoulders and hips, I didn't know this again until like the last few months, when they feel smooth and juicy, it's like you feel so much better. It's a whole new world. I'm Aladdin out there. And, when I'm on that magic yoga ride, it's like it feels real. And it's like, oh, wow, my day has changed. My week has changed.
Yes, and like for that reason too, I think people think because I am like this exercise junkie and I run marathons and yada yada that like every workout I do is some hardcore, crazy, gnarly workout, and like that's so not the case. I take gentle yoga classes regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I consider stretching a workout because it's
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff is just as important as gaining strength or burning
Yep.
calories or anything like that.
Totally. For freaking sure. Now, I know you've got to get going here pretty soon, and one of the questions that I do like to end on is the, if you could give your beginning comedy self any piece of knowledge, information, wisdom, uh, what would it be? Or what do you wish you knew when you were starting the game?
Honestly, the first thing that came to mind is like, don't, and this is easier said than done, but like, don't worry about everyone else.
Mm,
It's so easy to compare your success to other people's success or what you perceive to be their success. And I think that's a really limiting way to look at your own self because it's like yoga, like just worry about your own mat or stay in
mm-hmm,
your own lane. Like just the more you can sort of ignore, really, if it's
mm,
bothering you, then unfollow that person. Like
mm-hmm,
to the biggest degree you can, be mindful of the ways that you're comparing yourself to other people or
mm-hmm,
allowing yourself to succumb to jealousy around what's going on with other people, and you're gonna have such a better experience, and you're gonna write better shit.
mm-hmm. 100%. I love that. It's and it's so hard. But
Oh,
it can be such a it's the hardest part of the game probably in so many ways. Do you have anything that you try to do to help you kind of worry about your own path as opposed to anything else?
yeah, I mean, I think part of it was something that it was just years of doing it that I kind of just started to learn, like, oh, these things that I'm jealous about, that person got that thing, that TV spot or whatever, that festival that I was jealous at the time. And then 6 months later, that person is in exactly the same place as me. So I think just seeing that happen year
Mm-hmm.
in, year out sort of made me give less import to these sort of accomplishments that I was feeling jealous about other people having.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, the best thing to do is like just I stay so fucking busy you don't have time to worry about other people. Like don't
Mm-hmm.
that's
Keep
the best way to reduce your screen time.
Yeah, just keep doing stuff that you love, that you care about. Stacking the days,
Yeah,
stack the days. Just keep them going. That's an athlete kind of thing. And it's true. It's the same in comedy as it is in health. Stack the days, you know?
exactly. Yeah. And I try, I mean, I think I've always done this. I don't know if that's really related to like what I was just talking about, but like I always try to have something new in like every set I do because
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good to just always give yourself like a little carrot or something to keep it kind of scary
Fresh.
and fresh. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like to do the same stuff over and over exactly, you know? And so I'm not always stuck on exact wording. It's like ideas and stuff, or if I am doing the same set, switching stuff up, moving the order around, adding a new line, challenging myself to, I'll sometimes like give myself a word that I have to put in there, you
That's
know?
fun. That's fun.
Yeah, and sometimes I would do that with like friends when we were on the road. It's like, okay, tonight you got to put chinchilla in the act.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've done that too. Yes.
And it just makes it so much more fun and engaging for you as a comedian and for the people that are in on it too. It's a delight. So,
Exactly. I had a friend who was really good at the moth, which I loved moth. One hot
Wait.
tip I have for comics, if you have a moth in your city, like
Mm,
there's a huge crowd at those shows and you can just go enter the lottery and like you can kind of like do stand up with the moth.
yeah, for
So
sure.
I love the moth, but if you're a storytelling comic.
Yeah.
But my friend Buck Ball is great at the moth, and I remember working on a story with him, and he gave me this great tip. It was like every time you tell this story, be there and like visualize it as you're telling it, and every single time, like find something new that you didn't notice before.
Yeah. I love that. Like, because it forces you to open your eyes and pay attention. And so much stuff is going to come in that's going to impact you that you may not even have consciously taken in. You know what I mean? Or you haven't even written a joke about it in your head. But when it hits and it makes the connection on stage, sometimes you're like, oh, it just makes it so much more, uh, like you're present. And people can sniff out a faker from a mile away.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. And okay, what was I just gonna say? Ah, I lost it. I lost
Yeah.
it.
Well, it's been such a delight chatting with you today, Tess. Thank you so much for being around. Before we go, what's something that you're excited about moving forward? What's Tess stoked on these days? What are you looking forward to?
um, Well, I'm currently in production on a new podcast that I'm launching this spring that I'm
Ooh.
very excited about. So that and my album are kind of like my two guiding lights right now, and I'm very excited about both.
That's so cool. I'm excited to check out the Toxic podcast as well. That sounds super intriguing. I'll be really excited to hear how you put that together. So
Yeah, thanks for checking it out.
yeah, thank you for being on, Tess. Yeah, I really appreciate you and your time. And if you haven't seen Tess's comedy, check her out. What's your handle on the socials?
Everything is Testify with 2 S's, Barker. So Testify Barker.
Okay, awesome. Well, y'all better check out Testify Barker on the socials. Thank you so much for stopping by, Tess. Any parting words of wisdom?
Well, just do it.
I love it. We're Nike, baby. Oh no, I'm gonna cut that out. Who gives a shit? Just freaking do it. I love it. You heard it from Tess Barker. Thank you so much for stopping by. And until next time, enjoy some jokes and the gym if you want.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym.
With Rudy Tybersi.